During a high school reunion, my wife Bianca was participating in a lively game of truth or dare. Out of nowhere, her former flame, Ethan, fixed his gaze upon her and asked, "If it had been me you married, would you be willing to have children?" With a coy smile, Bianca replied, "Of course I would." Everyone in the room was well aware that Bianca had always chosen a child-free lifestyle, and I, too, had undergone a vasectomy 5 years ago as a consequence of that decision. A heavy silence fell over the gathering as all eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. I managed only a faint smile before suggesting, "Since you two clearly still harbor feelings for one another, why don't we find a time to get a divorce?" That unexpected quip set the tone for what would become a turbulent evening. Later that day, I received a voice message from Bianca that left me momentarily stunned. "Tonight is our reunion. Get ready and come pick me up for dinner. Don't be late," she said. I recalled that just a week earlier, I had been 10 minutes late for a date with her due to an urgent work meeting. Bianca had withdrawn completely for the entire week afterward. No calls, no texts, and she even relocated to the guest bedroom. Each time we met since, her simmering frustration was palpable, as I knew all too well that Bianca was fiercely proud and rarely admitted fault, which invariably led me to apologize simply to restore peace. So when she reached out amid our silent war, I saw it as her extending a lifeline, a chance for me to make an effort and perhaps mend our connection. Despite my growing irritation over the past few days, I couldn't bring myself to be angry with her. I resolved to patiently try to make things right, fearing that if I did not seize this opportunity, Bianca might never show me kindness again. Without hesitation, I arranged to take a day off from work and headed straight to a sprawling shopping mall in the city center. I knew exactly what Bianca had been coveting, a particular designer handbag that she'd admired for weeks. Every visit to the mall found her trying it on and lingering by it, even though its price tag of over $50,000 had always given us pause. Standing at the counter, I stared at the luxurious bag for what felt like an eternity until I finally mustered the courage to purchase it. To me, her happiness was priceless, regardless of the cost. With the bag secured, I rushed back home, managing to beat the evening rush hour on relatively clear roads that promised a 10-minute drive. At the final traffic light, I sent Bianca another voice message. "Darling, I'll be at our neighborhood in a few minutes. Get ready, I've brought you a little gift." Shortly after a turn, I arrived at the entrance of our community. I glanced at our chat app and noticed my message still awaiting a response. Bianca hadn't replied, and I decided not to press her. Instead, I turned my attention to catching up on some unfinished work in my car. Being one of the few seasoned employees at my company, my manager valued my dedication. Promotions, salary increases, and an almost automatic approval for my time off were all part of the package. So I set my phone aside and became absorbed in the data on my screen. Suddenly, the car door banged open. Startled, I looked up and saw Bianca standing outside with a stormy expression. "Don't be mad, honey. I'm sorry," she mumbled as she climbed in, grumbling about my parking choices and the heat. Her irritability was unmistakable, and it took all my effort to maintain my good mood. In a bid to salvage the moment, I reached into the back seat and produced the handbag. "You look radiant tonight, like you did when we first met. Back then, you wore that elegant white dress and carried a charm that could light up any room. Here's the bag you've long desired. Are you happy?" At the sight of the gift, Bianca's stern expression softened, and a gentle smile began to emerge. "Well, of course I'm beautiful," she quipped, referring to herself. I playfully pointed at my lips and asked, "So, does this bag earn me a kiss?" Bianca paused, then lightly pushed my head away. "Stop it. If we're late for the reunion, it won't end well." I decided not to press the matter further, assuming her mood would eventually warm up, and I activated the navigation app to check our destination. Glancing at the address, I frowned. Why is the venue so far out? It used to be right in the city center. Bianca's face briefly betrayed discomfort, and she stammered, "Ah, well, perhaps a change of scenery will be refreshing. They booked it near the airport in a suburban area." Sensing her irritation with the questioning, I said nothing further, choosing instead to let the matter drop. An hour later, Bianca and I reached the reunion hall with just 10 minutes to spare before the event began. Most of our old classmates had already arrived. I took Bianca's hand as we stepped into the bustling room, where conversations resumed and memories were exchanged. Amid the chatter, Jason, the class president, jokingly clapped his arm around me. "Aaron, after all these years, you and Bianca still insist on staying child-free?" he teased. I offered a slight smile and explained, "We're not planning on it right now. Bianca and I are enjoying our time together. Parenting might be overwhelming for us." Jason then turned to Bianca and inquired, "Bianca, don't you want kids?" She lowered her gaze, seemingly lost in thought, and I gently nudged her to join the conversation. Bianca's eyes filled with a flash of guilt as if she'd been caught off guard. "What's happening? What are you talking about?" Jason awkwardly chuckled and scratched his head before quickly shifting the topic. "Well, your method of contraception must be remarkably effective. 5 years together and not a single mishap. Most people around our age would be more open about these matters." Just then, Bianca interjected with a note of pride. "Of course, Aaron got a vasectomy. He agreed to it as soon as we married. Without it, I would have never agreed to tie the knot." Her words, meant to be lighthearted, left me flushed with embarrassment while our classmates exchanged uneasy glances. Jason tried to ease the tension with a couple of awkward chuckles, and I pressed my lips together, unsure of how to respond to the barbed remark. Bianca's focus quickly shifted, and she announced, "All right, everyone. You all chat while I need to go pick someone up. I'll be back shortly." I held her hand for a moment longer before she brushed it away, eager to leave. Watching her walk off, a sense of disquiet gnawed at me, as though an impending disaster loomed on the horizon. Once Bianca had left the gathering, I found it impossible to engage with anyone else. A deep unease washed over me, and I could feel my thoughts spiraling. Most of our former classmates had arrived, and I knew Bianca's indifference all too well. I mused that perhaps only someone like our mutual friend Samuel, who had flown in from abroad for the reunion, could prompt Bianca to actively seek someone to pick up. A wave of helplessness crashed over me as I wondered if I would ever escape the long shadow Samuel cast over our lives. After wrestling with these thoughts for a while, I sent Bianca a text message. "Honey, have you picked them up yet? When will you be back?" 1 minute passed, then 2, and eventually 10 minutes ticked by with no reply. Unable to hold back any longer, I grabbed my car keys and dashed out. As soon as I stepped outside, I collided with Bianca and Samuel, who were walking hand in hand. Bianca's eyes flashed with a brief hint of panic as she quickly let go of Samuel's hand. "Aaron," Samuel said in a tone that was both casual and condescending. "I was here to pick him up. I just came back from abroad for the reunion." His explanation, as feeble as it was, left little room for debate, Bianca added. "Samuel, help me with his luggage. He's carrying far too much," handing me a heavy suitcase. I couldn't help but let out a humorless laugh at the absurdity. I now found myself playing the errand boy for both of them. Samuel flashed a smug grin my way as I accepted the suitcase. In public, I kept my silence, though a chill ran down my spine at the implication of our predicament. After depositing the suitcase and taking my seat near our usual gathering spot, Bianca settled next to Samuel. "Let's not just eat," she suggested. "It would be far too dull. Why not spice things up with a game of truth or dare?" The others eagerly agreed. To liven up the reunion, Jason retrieved a spinning wheel from the waiter and placed it on the table. In the early rounds, the challenges were lighthearted, such as calling an ex to profess missed affections or declaring love for one's least favorite person. When the wheel landed on Bianca, she exhaled slowly before choosing truth. She reached for a card and read aloud, "What do you think of your current life situation?" Bianca's tone then turned reflective as she continued, "I'm quite satisfied. Unlike most women my age, many of whom have children or even a second one, I've always believed in living solely for oneself. Bringing children into this world often seems like a self-inflicted torment. Look at me, I barely need to work. Someone else earns the money for me, and I indulge in beauty treatments several times a week. Women burdened with kids rarely maintain the same freshness and elegance. Her condescending words cast an uncomfortable silence over the table. It wasn't surprising, since nearly everyone else present had children. Jason made a few awkward chuckles in an effort to diffuse the tension before suggesting, "Well, your choice to remain child-free is certainly admirable, Aaron. Let's move on." Before the wheel could be spun again, a voice from the far corner sneered, "Bianca, since you're so well off, when are you going to reimburse us for our cab fares?" I was taken aback by the unexpected request for travel expenses, a notion entirely foreign to our past reunions. "Why?" I inquired, perplexed. Bianca's response was measured and deliberate. "You should ask your devoted husband. It was I who insisted on holding the reunion in this god-forsaken place. I promised to cover the transportation costs, though $60 for a cab ride is a burden to me." Her tone was icy, and I stared at her in disbelief. "Why didn't you consult me before deciding on such matters?" she demanded sharply. Bianca's expression darkened as she accused, "Why are you so selfish, Aaron? Samuel's been on a long flight. Of course, we chose a venue close to him. Don't you understand?" Before I could reply, Jason clapped me on the shoulder and quickly redirected the conversation by announcing the next round of questions. The wheels spun once more, eventually pointing to Samuel. "Well, Samuel," Jason teased, "you seem to have all the luck. Not only have you returned, but you've also hit the jackpot." Samuel's surprise was evident, yet he soon mustered a faint smile as he scanned the room. Then, directing his attention toward Bianca, he asked, "Bianca, I've heard you've chosen a child-free life, and you've been married to Aaron for 5 years without having kids. Now, if you were married to me instead, would you want to have children?" The entire table fell silent as everyone eagerly awaited her response. Without hesitation, Bianca answered, "Of course I would. Bringing a child into the life of someone you love is a beautiful thing." Her words struck me like a blow, erasing years of affection in an instant. The room filled with a mix of disdain, sympathy, and thinly veiled mockery as Bianca's declaration sank in. In a frantic, almost panicked tone, she began to backtrack, trying to explain herself. But before I could interject, I found my resolve hardening. "Bianca," I said flatly, "since you and Ethan clearly share mutual feelings, perhaps it's time we schedule our divorce." Bianca's eyes widened in disbelief. "Aaron, what are you talking about? Are you out of your mind?" In Bianca's world, I had always been the compliant, spineless partner, ever eager to appease her. But that night, I refused to be that man any longer. Ignoring her protests, I grabbed my car keys and left the reunion hall. Once inside the car, my pounding heart gradually settled, though I promised myself that if Bianca sought me out, I would simply act as though nothing had happened. Yet as I sat there, time dragged on without a sign of her, and exasperation drove me to light a cigarette, only to stub it out after one puff, knowing full well that Bianca despised the smell of smoke in our car. I drove straight home, and upon opening the door, I was greeted by Rex, the stray dog I'd once rescued on my way to work. Rex immediately spun around with excitement and leaped into my arms. I recalled how Bianca had initially despised Rex for his unremarkable looks, until I assured her that I'd take full responsibility for him. Stroking Rex's soft head, a fleeting calm washed over me as I tried to process the bittersweet memories of our shared years. I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by turbulent emotions. The recollections of our happier times pierced my heart, and I began to wonder when our relationship had started its irreversible decline. Perhaps to Bianca, I had always been merely a substitute, a fallback for her true love, Ethan. The thought filled me with a bitter sorrow, and tears welled up silently as I contemplated the possibility that I was nothing more than a transient presence in her life. Eventually, I rose, determined to end the charade. I gathered my things and left for the bathroom, wrapping myself in a freshly dried towel on the balcony before stepping under the warm cascade of water. It felt as if the water were washing away not just the physical grime, but also the remnants of our shared pain. When I emerged, nearly midnight had crept upon me and exhaustion overcame my senses. I sank onto the sofa and drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. I awoke suddenly sometime later to an oppressive weight on my chest. Disoriented, I realized Bianca was sprawled on top of me, half her body covering mine. Her flushed face, scattered high heels, and disheveled state betrayed the fact that she had overindulged in alcohol. Gently, I repositioned her head with utmost care, wary of causing any discomfort. Slowly, Bianca stirred and murmured, "Don't leave me, I can't live without you." A stab of bitterness pierced me. Despite everything, it seemed that after 5 years, Bianca still clung to remnants of affection. I softened my tone as I whispered, "Samuel, don't leave me, I'll be good," only to be jolted by the realization that her desperate declarations were nothing more than illusions. In that moment, I recognized that Bianca had never truly held me in her heart. Overwhelmed by anger and betrayal, I lost control and struck her twice, commanding, "Get up, Bianca, stop lying on top of me." She blinked in confusion, her eyes filling with pain as she softly protested, "It hurts. Why didn't you wait for me?" My response was curt and bitter. "I won't forgive you." Even now, Bianca continued to confuse the issue, oblivious to her own mistakes. I moved her gently to the other end of the sofa and excused myself to the bedroom with my phone in hand. Under different circumstances, I might have stayed up all night preparing hangover soup and meticulously cleaning her makeup. But not tonight. I had seen through the charade. I had resolved to release her and free myself from a love that had long since turned toxic. Lying on the bed later, sleep eluded me as I stared blankly at the ceiling. Eventually, the soft morning light seeped through the window, and I discovered it was already 5 in the morning. With nothing left to do in bed, I dressed for work and made my way to the bathroom. Bianca remained on the sofa, her hair a tousled mess and makeup smeared, a silent testament to the previous night's chaos. Without a backward glance, I grabbed my briefcase and left the house. In the past, I would have hurried back to fix breakfast for her, but now I felt no compulsion to cater to someone who no longer loved me. The early morning roads were quiet, and what should have been a 40-minute commute took only half the usual time. Once at the office, I settled in at my desk, treating myself to a coffee and a croissant as I immersed myself in work. Without Bianca's constant interruptions, I found my efficiency soared. By lunchtime, I had completed all my morning tasks. During the break, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Bianca. One message read, "Aaron, you didn't help me remove my makeup last night after I got drunk. Don't you know it's terrible for my skin? You left me stranded on the sofa, and when I woke up, my back ached. You're so calculative. How are we supposed to continue like this? If you hadn't treated me so poorly at the start, do you think I'd still be with you? You don't even make me breakfast anymore. People really change. If you keep acting like this, I can't deal with it." The screen was awash with a torrent of accusations and complaints. I barely had the energy to sift through the messages. Instead, I felt utterly drained, both physically and emotionally. Up until the moment Bianca mentioned Ethan's name, I still held on to love for her, but now that hope had evaporated. I recalled the early days when I first met Bianca during our freshman volunteer work. I had eagerly participated in school-sponsored activities to earn extra credits, and the moment I saw her, her long ebony hair cascading down, her graceful white dress, and her smile as delicate as a blooming jasmine, I was captivated. I began to look forward to every chance encounter, even if Bianca was reserved and rarely spoke to others. Our friendship had grown by sheer chance. On a mountain climbing trip organized by our club, a sudden downpour and a series of misfortunes left Bianca stranded without proper gear, her flashlight breaking in the relentless rain. I removed my rain jacket and wrapped it around her, holding her close until our group was rescued the following afternoon. To show her gratitude, Bianca had invited me for a meal. That evening, in her drunken haze, she even mistook me for Ethan and tearfully asked, "Did Ethan send you to rescue me?" At that time, I had silently accepted being the substitute for her first love. For 5 years, I had devoted myself entirely to Bianca, hoping she might eventually forget Ethan and see me as more than just a placeholder. But as the reunion unfolded, I finally realized that no matter how much I gave, there would never be a true place for me in her heart. The revelation was brutally confirmed when I returned home from work one evening and found Bianca and Ethan laughing together at our dining table. Bianca froze briefly before donning her habitual haughty expression. "You didn't pick up your phone or reply to my messages, and you didn't even make me breakfast before you left," she sneered. "Aaron, you might as well just disappear out there." Rex barked at Bianca and Ethan as if protesting the injustice. I stifled my rising anger and asked, "Why is Ethan here? What exactly are you trying to do? Do you even care about me?" Bianca's disdainful look only deepened as she strode into the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and flung it at my feet. "Samuel just returned from abroad," she declared, "and staying in a hotel is impractical, so I brought him home. What's your problem?" When I retorted that if she was unhappy, she could take Rex and leave, Bianca coldly replied, "Ethan is allergic to dog hair, and I wouldn't risk his health." I nearly laughed at her audacity. How could she demand I leave a house I'd paid for? "If anyone should go, it's you," I shot back. At that, Ethan looked up with a victorious air, and Bianca smirked as if amused by my dismay. "The deed is in my name," she quipped, "so I can decide who stays. Now take Rex and get out." My heart pounded with fury as I replied, "Fine, Bianca. Let's get a divorce. I'll meet you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Don't be late." Bianca's eyes flashed with a momentary panic before she suppressed it. I gathered Rex, grabbed my suitcase, and departed from the home we had shared for 5 years. By early evening, when it became clear that finding a rental on such short notice was nearly impossible, I had no choice but to check into a nearby hotel with Rex. Lying on that unfamiliar bed, I felt, for the first time, the crushing weight of failure. I had loved Bianca wholeheartedly, yet now I found myself cast aside like a discarded prop from a tragic novel. With a bitter laugh, I blocked all of her contact information, vowing never to let her hurt me again. The following morning, I took leave from my supervisor and, accompanied by Rex, set out to find a modest rental nearby. After an exhausting day of searching, I finally secured a reasonably priced place in a decent neighborhood. As I filled Rex's bowl with water and dog food, my phone buzzed with a message from my childhood friend Morgan. "Aaron, you and Bianca aren't really getting divorced, are you?" The message read, accompanied by a screenshot of a recent social media post showing Bianca and Ethan holding hands at a movie. I stared at the post, feeling nothing but indifference. After all the betrayals, I saw them as nothing more than clowns. If I don't finalize this divorce after being cheated on, then I truly must be the biggest coward, I mused silently. Morgan sent a comforting sticker a few minutes later, but I put my phone aside without replying. It had been a week since I moved out, and Bianca had not contacted me first. I suspected she might not even know I had blocked her. Since she had ignored me and read my divorce message without reply, I resolved to proceed with legal separation. In the days following the end of our relationship, I began to feel a surprising sense of relief. I no longer needed to worry about Bianca's meals, sacrifice my work for her whims, or endure her constant mistreatment. I assumed I would have no further contact with her. Until one day after work, I spotted her standing outside my new apartment. I had planned to take Rex for a walk when I noticed Bianca, still dressed in that pristine white dress, clutching a thermos. Tears glistened in her eyes as she stared at me. I wanted nothing more to do with her. But before I could walk away, she grabbed my wrist. I turned back sharply, and Bianca quickly wiped her tears while pleading, "Aaron, if I don't come find you, you'll never come find me. Why are you pretending not to see me?" I had no patience for her dramatic outbursts and shook her hand off. As she hurried to catch up, she pleaded, "I even burned my hand making pork rib soup for you. Don't you care at all? When you said you wanted a child with Ethan, didn't you care about me? And when you kicked me out, wasn't I important?" Bianca's voice trailed off, but I could sense her desperation. Rex bounded over to greet me, clearly uninterested in the human quarrel. Bianca attempted to salvage the situation by making a few playful kissing noises at Rex, only to be met with indifference from him. "Bianca, what is it that you want?" I asked wearily. I really don't have the energy for these endless, meaningless gestures. At that moment, she suddenly blurted, "Aaron, only now do I realize that you're the only person I truly love." Can we go back to how things were? Her words baffled me. I had long believed that love, when it comes too late, is as cheap as grass. Before I could process her plea, Bianca's tone shifted once more as she continued. Ethan is nothing but a liar. He already has a wife and children abroad, and he deceived me by pretending to be single. He even took all my savings. Aaron, please help me. I promise to love you from now on. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Everything I had done for her over the years was based on my genuine love for Bianca. Yet now her attempts at garnering sympathy seemed utterly ridiculous. All this is your own doing, I retorted sharply. And don't forget, half the money on that card is mine. Remember to pay me back or just wait until I sue you. I shoved the thermos into her hands and added coldly, "We'll meet again. Divorce court awaits you." The faint spark of hope in Bianca's eyes faded as she slowly walked out of my apartment, clutching the thermos with a dazed expression. Aaron, I love you. I'll always be around, even if just in the background, she called softly. I ignored her and closed the door firmly behind me, determined that I would never let her mess up my life again. In the following weeks, life began to regain a semblance of peace. I immersed myself in work, keeping so busy that I hardly had time to dwell on past nonsense. Yet one day, the atmosphere at the office felt different. Whispers trailed behind me as I passed by colleagues who seemed to be gossiping about me. I initially assumed it was nothing more than the usual chatter until I stepped outside the building and was met by a throng of people gathered near the entrance. To my astonishment, Bianca and her best friend Fiona were among the crowd, holding a banner that read, "Aaron, abandon Bianca." As the crowd swelled, Bianca's face lit up with a desperate excitement, and she rushed over to grab my hand. I instinctively stepped back as Bianca whispered, "Aaron, don't blame me. I had no other choice. Without you, I can't survive. I even pretended to be pregnant to force you back. Please, let's get back together. I'll clear everything up. I won't remain child-free any longer. We can have a baby together." Seeing that I made no move to reciprocate, Fiona interjected indignantly, "Aaron, you're such a jerk. Heartless, even. Abandoning the child Bianca is carrying, your own flesh and blood. I know you prefer to remain child-free, but Bianca has done so much for you. Have you no compassion?" I felt my temples throb with the weight of the drama unfolding before me. In a bid to diffuse the escalating tension, I remarked casually, "By the way, I sent those photos of you with older men at the hotel to your husband." I flashed my phone with a grin, though I knew there were no such incriminating images. I was simply playing with fire. Fiona's face drained of color as she sputtered, "What nonsense are you spouting? You know deep down what's right." Before anyone could regain composure, Fiona suddenly turned on Bianca, accusing her bitterly. "You hypocrite! You've been carrying your first love's child, not Aaron's. You came to me to shift the blame, and now you're betraying me behind my back." In moments, Fiona, tall and imposing, overpowered Bianca. The confrontation escalated quickly. Fiona slapped Bianca hard enough to send her sprawling to the floor. As Bianca writhed in pain and shock, the crowd stood frozen, filming the chaotic scene. Eventually, security intervened and an ambulance arrived. The entire ordeal was soon posted online, igniting a firestorm of criticism that exposed both Bianca and Ethan's personal details to the prying eyes of social media. Sometime later, I learned that Bianca had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital by her family. The relentless barrage of harassing messages, threatening letters, and even blades had driven her to the brink. When I saw her again, she was a shadow of her former glamorous self, dressed in a disheveled hospital gown, her face streaked with tears and snot as she trembled in a corner of a modest room. When our eyes met, a faint glimmer of remorse shone in her vacant gaze as she managed a bitter smile. "Aaron, I thought you'd never want to see me again in this lifetime. I know I was wrong. I never meant to hurt you." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the divorce agreement and a pen. "This is our last meeting," I said. "If you sign this paper, we sever all ties." Bianca forced a bitter laugh as tears blurred her vision. "Aaron, do you really have no feelings for me now? I know I shouldn't have been involved with Ethan. I've accepted my punishment. I can never be normal again. Can you ever forgive me? I softened my tone slightly, replying, Bianca, the moment you declared you'd rather have Ethan's child than share a future with me, my heart died a little. You drained every bit of love I once had. Forgiveness cannot undo all that has happened. In the end, Bianca's eyes went blank once more as she picked up the pen and signed the agreement with a resigned wish for my happiness. Taking the signed document from her, I felt a palpable sense of relief. Shortly thereafter, I requested a transfer at work. I needed to leave behind the painful memories and start anew. A week later, I boarded a plane with Rex, bound for a southern city. Once I had settled into a new routine, working and living a simple, unremarkable life. The following winter, I received an unexpected letter from Bianca. I wasn't sure how she had discovered my address, but I opened it regardless. The letter began, Aaron, by the time you read this, I will likely have died in the bitter winter of the North. Since you left, I have sunk into a deep depression and languished in a hospital bed, drifting through each day in a haze. I keep dreaming of the first time we met on that mountain, when you wrapped your coat around me during that torrential downpour. In that moment, despite the cold and my exhaustion, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness because of your care. Unfortunately, back then I failed to appreciate what it meant to cherish, and I ended up breaking your heart. Bianca's words continued in a desperate, almost manic tone as she recounted her longing to return to that first, tender moment, expressing her wish to have a healthy, chubby baby with me, to create a happy family of 3, and to rewrite the past. If only I could tell my past self not to meet Ethan, not to cause you so much pain. But I cannot. So I must end my life and rid myself of the person I've become. She wrote, I don't seek your forgiveness. I only hope that in another life you might give me a chance to love you properly. I want you to live your life fully, see the world, experience different cultures, and please, don't forget to buy Rex some of his favorite treats. Bianca signed off with a farewell, expressing a hope that my life would be smooth and happy from now on. After reading the letter, I felt an unexpected numbness. I patted Rex, who slept soundly by the door, and resolved that my life would now be mine to reclaim. In the ensuing days, free from Bianca's interference, I embraced the newfound tranquility. Yet fate, it seemed, had one final twist in store. One evening after work, I noticed Bianca waiting outside my rented apartment. I had planned a quiet walk with Rex when I saw her, dressed in that immaculate white dress, holding a thermos, her eyes brimming with tears. I tried to ignore her, but she quickly grabbed my wrist. I turned reluctantly as Bianca pleaded, Aaron, if I don't come looking for you, you'll never come find me. Why are you pretending I'm not here? Her voice was laced with both sorrow and determination. I snapped, Bianca, what do you want? I'm too tired for these endless theatrics. In a sudden twist, Bianca blurted, Aaron, only now do I realize that you are the one I truly love. I understand now that you are the best person in this world for me. Can we go back to the way things were? Before I could respond, she continued with fresh accusations. Ethan is nothing but a liar. He's married with children abroad and swindled me out of my savings. Please, Aaron, help me. I promise to love you forever. And remember, half the money on that card is mine. Pay me back or prepare for legal action. I pushed her toward the door, shoving the thermos into her hands, and coldly warned, We'll see each other again. Divorce court awaits. Bianca's face fell as she whispered, Aaron, I love you. I'll always be around wherever you look. I closed the door, silently vowing that I would no longer allow this chaos into my life. In the weeks that followed, with Bianca out of the picture, my life slowly returned to normal. I threw myself into work, busy enough that I barely had time to dwell on past conflicts. One afternoon, however, as I stepped out of the office building, I was met by a crowd of onlookers. Among them stood Bianca and her friend Fiona, holding a banner proclaiming, Aaron abandoned Bianca. As I navigated through the throng, Bianca rushed forward, grabbing my hand and whispering, "Aaron, don't blame me. I had no choice. Without you, I can't survive. I even pretended to be pregnant to force you to stay. Please, let's fix this. I promise we'll have a beautiful baby together." Fiona, seizing the moment, added indignantly, "Aaron, you're heartless. How can you abandon the child Bianca is carrying, your own flesh and blood? You may prefer being child-free, but Bianca has sacrificed so much for you." Their words, combined with the judging stares of the gathered crowd, made me feel trapped in a dramatic spectacle. In an attempt to lighten the tension, I mentioned with a wry smile, "By the way, I sent those photos of you and the older men at that hotel to your husband," though I knew I had no such evidence. Fiona's face drained of color as she sputtered, "What are you talking about?" The tension exploded when Fiona, overwhelmed by fury, turned on Bianca, accusing her, "You hypocrite! You've been carrying your first love's child, not mine, and now you're blaming Aaron for everything." In moments, Fiona overpowered Bianca physically. She slapped Bianca hard enough to send her reeling, and soon chaos reigned. Amidst the turmoil, security intervened and an ambulance was called. The entire incident was recorded by bystanders and quickly posted online, inciting a furious outcry that exposed both Bianca and Ethan to relentless social media scrutiny. Not long after, I learned that Bianca's family had admitted her to a mental health facility, unable to cope with the barrage of harassment, threats, and even attempted suicides that had followed the incident. When I next encountered her, Bianca was a mere shell of the woman she once was, her once elegant features now marred by the stains of despair and neglect. Clad in a rumpled hospital gown, with tear-streaked cheeks and trembling limbs, she looked up at me as I entered. "Aaron," she whispered, "I thought you'd never see me again. I know I was wrong. I never intended to hurt you." I reached into my bag and produced the divorce papers along with a pen. "This is our final parting. Sign this and we will have no further ties." Bianca forced a hollow laugh as she asked, "Aaron, do you really have no feelings left for me? I accept that I made a terrible mistake with Ethan, and I've already paid my dues. Can you ever forgive me?" I replied softly, "The moment you declared you'd rather have Ethan's child, everything changed. You drained the love I had for you over all these years. Forgiveness cannot erase that damage." After a long, painful pause, Bianca, with vacant eyes and a trembling hand, signed the papers, whispering a wish for my happiness. Taking the signed document, I felt an undeniable lightness seep into my being. Soon after, I requested a transfer from my job, yearning to leave behind the memories that had caused me so much pain. Within a week, I boarded a plane with Rex bound for a southern city, determined to rebuild my life with a simple, steady routine. Winter came, and one day I received a letter from Bianca. I wasn't certain how she had obtained my address, but curiosity compelled me to read it. In her letter, she wrote, "Aaron, by the time you read this, I will likely have faded away in the harsh northern winter. Since you left, I have sunk into a deep depression, spending my days in a hospital bed, lost in a fog of regret. I keep reliving the memory of our first meeting, when you wrapped your coat around me during that torrential mountain downpour. In that fleeting moment, I felt warmth and happiness, though I didn't know then how to cherish what we had. I now long for the past. I dream of having a chubby, healthy baby and forming a happy family of 3. I wish I could warn my past self not to let Ethan into our lives, to spare you this heartbreak. I cannot change who I am now, so I must end my life and free myself of this misery. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I only hope that in another lifetime, you will give me another chance. Until then, live your life fully, explore the world, embrace new cultures, and please, spare some kindness for Rex with extra treats. I hope you find happiness, Aaron. I will always love you." After reading her letter, I felt neither joy nor sorrow, only a deep, numbing indifference. I patted Rex, who dozed quietly on the floor, and resolved that from now on, my life was mine alone. In the months that followed, I enjoyed a newfound sense of peace without Bianca's interference. I focused on work, allowing my life to settle into a calm routine. Yet one day, as I left the office, I was met by a surprising spectacle. Bianca and Fiona stood at the entrance of my building with a banner demanding, "Aaron, abandon Bianca." The crowd around them buzzed with whispers and judgment. When Bianca saw me, she rushed forward, grabbing my hand and pleading, "Aaron, don't blame me. I had no other choice. Without you, I can't survive." I instinctively stepped back, weary of the theatrics. Bianca continued, "I even burned my hand making pork rib soup for you. Didn't you care about me when I was alone? When you rejected me and made me feel worthless, didn't it hurt?" Before I could respond, Fiona added in a chiding tone, "Aaron, you're so heartless. How can you abandon the child Bianca is carrying, your own flesh and blood? You may claim you want to remain child-free, but Bianca has sacrificed everything for you." Their onslaught of words and the judgmental stares of the assembled crowd left me no choice but to remain silent, which only deepened the onlookers' sense of betrayal. In that charged moment, I couldn't help but retort, "By the way, I sent those photos of you with older men at that hotel to your husband," teasing them with a threat that, in reality, was nothing more than empty bravado. Fiona's face turned pale as she sputtered, "What nonsense are you spouting? You know deep down what's right." Bianca's eyes widened in horror before Fiona abruptly lunged at her. What began as angry words soon escalated into physical violence. Fiona grabbed Bianca by the hair, and within moments, Bianca was pinned to the ground. Fiona's harsh blows left Bianca reeling, and amidst the chaos, the gathered crowd stood frozen, recording every moment on their phones. Eventually, security intervened, and an ambulance whisked Bianca away. The entire episode was posted online, and both Bianca's and Ethan's personal details were exposed to a storm of public condemnation. In the aftermath, I learned that Bianca's family, unable to bear the onslaught of harassment and threats, including actual blades and ominous letters, had committed her to a psychiatric hospital. When I next saw her, the vibrant woman I once knew was gone. Now, clad in a rumpled hospital gown with tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands, Bianca sat in a corner of a sterile room. As I entered, a faint glimmer of recognition appeared in her vacant eyes. "Aaron, I thought you'd never want to see me again. I know I was wrong. I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. I pulled out the divorce papers and a pen from my bag and said, "This is our final farewell. Sign this, and we sever all ties." Bianca forced a bitter laugh through her tears and asked softly, "Aaron, do you truly have no feelings left for me? I know I shouldn't have been with Ethan, and I've accepted my punishment. Can you ever forgive me?" I replied, my voice low and steady. "Bianca, the moment you declared you'd rather have Ethan's child than be with me, everything changed. You drained every bit of love I had. Forgiveness cannot undo the pain you inflicted over all these years." After a long, painful pause, Bianca's eyes emptied further as she picked up the pen and signed the papers, murmuring a wish for my future happiness. Taking the document from her, I felt a burden lift from my shoulders. Soon after, I arranged a transfer at work and left the city that had been steeped in painful memories. A week later, I boarded a plane with Rex for a fresh start in a southern city. Life resumed its slow, steady rhythm. Work, quiet evenings, and a simple routine. Then, one winter day, I received another letter from Bianca. Though I wasn't sure how she had found my address, I read her words with detached curiosity. In that letter, she recounted her spiraling depression and her longing for the tender moments we once shared. When you wrapped your coat around me during that mountain downpour, when I felt warmth and happiness even in the cold. She spoke of dreams of having a healthy, chubby baby and forming a family, and of wishing she could turn back time to avoid meeting Ethan. Yet, with heartbreaking finality, she wrote that she could no longer endure the pain of her own existence and planned to end her life, hoping that in another lifetime she might have the chance to love me properly. She ended by urging me to live freely, see the world, and even pamper Rex with extra treats, signing off with a final farewell. After closing that letter, I patted Rex, who was sleeping soundly on the floor, and resolved that my life would now truly be my own. I blocked Bianca's contact information for good, determined never to be hurt by her again. Looking back now, I see that my life has finally returned to a peaceful routine. I've immersed myself in my work and personal interests, leaving behind the chaos that Bianca once brought. Yet sometimes, even in this newfound tranquility, memories of that tumultuous time resurface. But I remain steadfast, determined to live a quiet, unremarkable life, one free from the drama and heartbreak of the past.